Dear colleagues, we are opening the final plenary session of our forum. The task is to draw a line under the sessions that we had today, to listen to some final presentations from the speakers and forum moderators. And first, I'd like to give floor to the deputy head of the Environmental Department and the Government of Moscow, Mr. Kuzmin. Good afternoon, dear friends, dear colleagues, dear speakers and delegates of the second International Climate Forum. I'm very happy to welcome you at Bedenha territory. I think we have interpretation, right? Right. I'd like to congratulate you on behalf of Moscow and the Department of International Affairs and External Economic Relations. I want to congratulate you on behalf of these organizations. I think that this event becomes a tradition, and next year we'll be also hosting this forum. And together with my boss, we'll do everything we can to ensure that the international interest in what Moscow is doing in this area, well, we hope that this interest will become sooner. We are a big city. We can compare ourselves with such cities as Tokyo, Paris, Hong Kong, people with a population of over 10 million people. And undoubtedly, being such a big city, we should be able to compete, to be competitive in all the spheres of the city life. We have the conclusion. We'll listen to the final words from the experts, and I would like to wish you a nice remainder of the day and nice remainder of your stay in Moscow. And I give floor to Anatoly Prigosetsky, Director of the Department of Environmental Management and Protection. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. We've gathered together to make the conclusions. We had a big agenda. During these 2 days. We exchanged our opinions. We had over 200 speakers who took part in the discussions, and of course, it would have been a very bad thing if this information, if these fantastic thoughts are lost and not brought together. And we got some innovative ideas, and of course we should take them into account. We can't have any excuses here. We should do that. So I want you to be specific. We want to hear specific proposals from you for us to be able to implement them in the nearest future. That's what I'd say. Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to be brief and sum up the results, so to say, and the recommendations that we heard during this forum. Of course, it's a complex, tricky task. I have approximately half of such ideas to voice because we haven't yet gathered all together. So I'll voice only some general matters and what I got at the moment. So firstly, we observed an interesting format of discussion that was dedicated to discussion of collaboration of the cities within the framework of international initiatives. It's very interesting because Moscow is part of C40 alliance and is part of the global Council of City Mayors in and participation in such initiatives is good in the sense of representing Moscow on the international arena and in the sense of picking up the new ideas for us, and I'm very grateful. I think it's a very good format, and we should carry on with this. We had another format of discussion. We were discussing best practices in cities and regions in implementing environmental initiatives. A good thing here is that the results, they do not appear out of the blue. You need to plan them. And the more ambitious goal you set for yourself, the bigger chance is that you get a good result. I think it doesn't make any sense in, saying that the greenhouse gases, we should decrease the greenhouse gases emissions. We understand that the level of greenhouse gases emissions is going to be growing. Taking measures in this sense, well, it's good, but I think we should focus on some specific things that, and those things will be some steps in the whole chain of activities that have to be carried out. We had 2 events dedicated to the role of business in this sense. Business to business and business to government. Well, we have such a thing as climatic risks, and businesses face them in that form. Risks in terms of customer behavior, investor behavior in the market, risks in terms of regulation of the prices for hydrocarbons, and climatic risks have to be taken into account as well. Today we have this understanding, but we don't see any adequate reactions to this matter. As for the partnership was said to be the best form of collaboration. And dictatorship is not a good thing when the government tells people what to do. It should be a partnership. It should be interaction. And before getting together, first you need to understand the borders of each of the parties, and we need to understand that. But in the 21st century, we need to understand we should understand that we have to live in such a way that we don't interfere with each other and collaborate. We had a series session dedicated to the climate changes affecting health of people in cities and regions. When we are saying that climate is changing, it doesn't mean that it's just physical changes. Sooner or later, it affects person's health. And of course, some measures related to cities adapting to this should be implemented. In Moscow and Arkhangelsk, they have such plans, and they have such. These 2 cities have such programs aimed at supporting the environment, ensuring the comfortable environment during the negative weather conditions. Well, it's a good thing. And when we carry out other events, future events, we need to focus more on that, creating comfortable conditions in the cities is very important. Maybe taking several pilot areas within the cities to test different technologies connected to that. There was a separate session dedicated to green funding. Green funding is a way of attracting investment or financial resources into the projects, focusing on decreasing the greenhouse gases emissions and ensuring sustainable development. And it was a it was a very active and live discussion. And there were questions regarding what a green project is, what kind of criteria we should use to call the project green. How do we make sure? How do we prove this to investors that the project is still green? What kind of privileges and discounts the investors should get, and how should we simplify the investment process here? Well, Russia doesn't have experience in this area, and the World Bank, European Bank, and other organizations had experience, and maybe it's so. It seems that it's time when similar financial products should be offered within the Russian Federation.
From traditional financing, from development and usual understanding of this word, we should move to selective financing, so to say, opting for those projects which ensure progress in the 21st century. I think this time it was the first year, a premiere of the panel session dedicated to the questions of urban mobility. I would say that this is a big achievement in itself, to speak and to pose questions about transfer of the city transport infrastructure to green rails. That's a highly necessary thing. In big cities, transport is the main source of GHG emissions after power generation, utilities and facilities. So the question of making transport green is extremely important, and I'm very glad that such session took place within our forum. We should definitely continue, but also go over to some practical steps. I'm glad that Moscow government has plans in that sense to introduce electric cars and changing the metro principles. And it makes sense to continue and transit from traditional transport to electric transport. In some cities, there is an initiative not to let in the center of the city of traditional transport. I don't know when Moscow is going to do it. Me neither. If there is a proposal, I am ready to say to pass it to the mayor. Well, I am not ready to say it, but this is what was done in London. But why wouldn't Moscow think about that? Making center green completely and also fully pedestrian. It may make sense to speculate in that. Out of the documents which are available to us, I think I mentioned everything. There were also other events concerned with responsible consumption. Another session which was dedicated to the role of mass media in terms of its coverage, the coverage of green issues. Not only coverage, but also education. I think that's very important, in particular in the part of reduction of GHG emissions. It's very important that some interaction with population is established, because in the long run this is done for and by the residents of the city. After all, this is their emissions, and this is they consumer stereotypes which influence, among everything else, the behavior within the conditions of cold and heat. This is also behavior. They shouldn't get scared and panic. They should know where to go, who to address. So the question of education is very important here. I'll finish here, and if there are any questions, the participants of the panel discussion can answer it. Well, I would offer to give at least a phrase or two to all the speakers present here. Left to right or right to left? Okay. You are the chairman, so 2 or 3 words.
John Rosser from the United States. First of all, congratulations on this second annual forum. I work with cities around the world, and it's terrific to see the leadership from the city of Moscow, not only the effort, but really the wonderful organization for this council and also the event. And so I very much congratulate the city of Moscow and the organizers. And just one other thought, there was a wonderful event this summer, the World Cup, where countries came around the world to Moscow, and people came around the world to Moscow. And when they left Moscow, they felt much closer to Russia, to Moscow. Their impressions changed, because it always changes when you go and meet people from other cities. So I'm excited to support a media project where I believe the potential to reach a global audience and have them feel very similar to how people felt coming here celebrating the World Cup. And first of all, congratulations to Russia's success in the World Cup. That was a fantastic story. But we want to create wonderful stories, just like with soccer, with sustainability, to connect the world to Moscow. And by doing that, we elevate, we lift up the city of Moscow with all the other great cities in the world. So I'm excited to be part of the council. Again, my congratulations to all these efforts and all the people who worked very, very hard behind the scenes to make this happen. They deserve a round of applause.
Да, наши панельные
Our panel sessions were concerned with green building and real examples of implemented projects, which does not only include buildings but also companies linked with those buildings, as well as society, social and economical and ecological issues. I have 5 proposals at least. First, we communicate with a lot of developer companies who build green buildings. They need some clear motivations for eco-building activities. What I propose is to develop the strategy for the city of Moscow for environment-friendly building, which would imply motivation for them. Number 2, during our session we heard a lot about barriers which hamper the construction of green buildings, especially for commercial sector. This is old construction regulations. All of us know that the Ministry of Construction works on that, but I would like to define precisely what are the regulations in construction which are the greatest obstacle for our sector, and what would be the cost of transition, and we can make such research as well. Thirdly, that success which already exists in this area. It was published today, the catalogue of 25 buildings in Moscow and the Moscow district, which the majority here do not know about. So there is more success to show. So the third proposal is using the press services of departments and via all possible channels, such as eco-centers available with the departments, we should show the existing success. Fourthly, something which was mentioned during the session, that's the creation of R&D centers for our district. We have shown a precise plan. I have a presentation, but I cannot show it today now. So we would like to introduce a procedure and see whether the city of Moscow is ready to support our project and ready to work with us. And lastly, international cooperation. As John said, the world does not know what happens in Russia, how much is happening. So we would like to have C40 channel and other channels existing in Moscow to include some part about green building and about projects existing in this sphere. There are many organizations who work in this, and we would like to have greater communication with them. Thank you. My name is Alexandra Titova. I'm the chief editor of Plus One project and a general partner of the forum. And first and foremost, I would like to say thank you so much for the organization of such a big event. Today, we held a session named Climate and Mass Media. How to write about climate change and how to raise awareness of this problem. And if we speak about the session, we came to such conclusions that, of course, it is pleasant that Moscow took on this leadership in terms of creation of the climate agenda and bringing it to a new level, because the federal government, unfortunately, is a bit slow with the ratification of the Paris Agreement. This is the question which is in the focus of mass media representatives. We are very glad to see that this agenda appears in the level of the cities. As you know, we have such city as St. Petersburg, which already has its own strategy of adaptation to climate changes. This is also something we would like to speak about. And still another problem, as we see it, is, of course, low level of information of the population of the problem of climate change and those solutions which exist for reduction of GHG emissions. And in this context, we would like to offer a decision of creation of an international information platform which might be made by representatives of different countries and cities. The top part of this platform would be media, the editions which might write about climate changes, and the bottom part of it could be, or underwater part, some sort of professional Facebook, no advertisement here, which all international experts might use for communication with each other, for finding each other in this social network. And maybe even for implementation of projects together, or at least for filing applications for those projects. What is pleasant here that the technological solution or the base of this platform has been developed already by Plus One project, because originally we made it for ourselves, trying to create an instrument of direct communication between all participants of sustainability market. But this is a local Russian solution which is intended for communication of Russian participants of the market. But here, as we spoke during this forum, we understood that this is something to be done. This must be an international project involving different teams and journalists and marketologists as well. Because, of course, climate and everything to do with it is not only a big challenge, it's also a big market. So we should think how to monetize this platform in the future, how to develop it. But the main goal, again, would be to inform population, to create the content, maybe not only expert content but also entertaining content, which would be demanded by a broad audience. And secondly, the creation of a tool with which all of you wonderful experts could communicate with each other directly and move from words to business, implementing projects together. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ricardo Energy Environment, which is a UK consultancy company which is operating worldwide, and I've been involved in some of the energy efficiency sessions here. And I think the main thing that completely stands out is that there isn't a single standard approach which can resolve these problems, and it's a mixture of both imposing penalties on companies and organisations and that are unable to, or don't improve their efficiency, but most importantly incentives on those that do, or that do want to. And we're currently, for the UK Foreign Office, working with partners here to review what approaches have been used in the UK for industrial energy efficiency, and then trying to find out what might work best in the Russian context, because I'm sure that not everything will work well. So that's one thing. And the other thing I would just like to say is that while it's not my area of expertise, and I haven't been involved at this workshop, Ricardo has one of the world leading air quality teams. They would just love to help support Moscow government in that area. We did have some discussions last year when representatives of government came to London, but we're just dying to help you with that. Can I also say finally, I think I've been coming back to Moscow now irregularly over the past, I suppose it's 14 years, and it's very impressive the way that Moscow has changed in those years. This has given me an eye-opener in the way that Moscow government is open to new ideas, fresh thinking, picking the best practice from the rest of the world wherever it comes to, and I think that's really impressive.
First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to the forum organizers for including the second time the theme of climate and health, which made it possible for us to discuss with different experts what happens in the world's largest metropolises. Our session was opened by the representative of the World Health Organization, Mr. Kentrovsky. I think he will also say a few words. And this was very important. We saw that what happens in our country is fully in trend with what is being discussed by the European Bureau of WHO. During this year, very big changes occurred. I would say breakthrough changes, because we received a completely new, innovative solutions which will not only be interesting to us but also to the colleagues in different cities. And this is something that the colleague has mentioned who spoke about +1 portal. That's how people should behave during heat wave, for instance, what should be the medicine therapy, because it is world known that the cardiologist center made a very big research and simply showed what are the simplest, most accessible and inexpensive medicines could be used, because we're speaking about people of elderly age who are the main sufferers of heat waves. So what they should take to get adjusted to that. And if we speak about informing, I would like to recall that 8 years back, when we had abnormal heat in Moscow, which is similar in some way to the European heat of 2003, there was a certain perplexity in mass media. But everything which was issued then is definitely not enough. Since television is still the main source of information, we should probably look for different ways of distributing different booklets and leaflets, you can call them anything, and that must be a very active input in the time when heat starts. That's the metro system, that's public transport, which is very well developed in Moscow. These are centers of social protection where pensioners come, and so on. The second thing I'd like to mention is we heard a very interesting generalization of experience of the world's capitals, including New York, Tokyo, Singapore, and London, and some other cities, which showed how these issues are solved there. In some ways, we go in parallel, and in some ways, there is something where we lack experience. So maybe at the next forum, it may make sense to discuss the problems of planning and developing of the city quarters from the point of view of searching the best possible solutions which create most favorable climate for health. And here we come to the concept of open space, green space. Here there are some problems here. We know very well that Moscow has gigantic reserve of green planting, but we still do not know how much time does it take a Muscovite to reach a good green space where he or she can recreate. Moscow, as any other metropolis, is very heterogeneous in its structure, and I assume that the recommendations by WHO, which are available today, can be implemented in the sample of Moscow. Maybe some area in the city center can be taken for that, because a center is always a heat island. That's what all our climatologists know. Moscow has heat islands and canyons. That was shown by our speakers on the examples of other cities. So there is an idea that on the one hand Moscow has to implement the best available techniques which exist in other metropolises of the world. It's very interesting. It was very interesting to learn the new plans of New York for the adaptation. The first plan we studied very much in detail, same as Paris plans, and the recommendations were used, prepared by the Moscow of the government. The plan approved by the Moscow mayor Sergei Sobyanin, which is implemented each time when there is a feeling, and we know from the meteorology service that a heat wave is coming up.
And at the same time, we can really offer some interesting innovative solutions, adapting the population to the unfavorable weather conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Haratiot, and I work for the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. I would also like to congratulate the organizers and say thanks for a really brilliant forum. I have certainly learned a lot and met a lot of interesting participants from all over the world. And I think this conference has been a great example of the power of working together across countries and government levels and different sectors, both within industry but also NGOs, etc. So I am the coordinator of an international project on best available techniques to prevent and control industrial pollution. And I've been here to talk about our new report on this topic, which the Russian BAT Bureau has been kind enough to translate into Russian for us, so that should be accessible to everyone. And BAT is indeed a key tool to reduce industrial emissions, and also then as part of the SDG agenda, including to achieve more sustainable industry development. And this goes also at the city level, obviously. So based on this, I would like to encourage all governments to continue working together to adopt and implement BAT policies and bring relevant stakeholders from all sectors together to gather information on available techniques and identify the best available techniques. Because in that way, we can continue sharing best practices across countries. An important part of this is obviously also to keep monitoring emissions and assessing performance so that we can keep learning from our experiences and from each other. So the OECD's BAT project has been running for 3 years now. We have a very valuable international expert group, and we hope to keep working with many of you over the years to come, so that we together can keep mitigating industrial pollution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am Anne Giraud. I am the head of Paris Climate Agency. And I will also congratulate the organization of the forum, which is a so pleasant place to be, to share experience and to see how the city are on board to struggle against climate change. It was also so interesting to have many experiences from many cities from all over the world, to have the opportunity to discuss and to see and people's and new ideas, new experience, and thank you for that. We have also some opportunities to discuss practical things, and maybe you have heard me. I know you know that as a Paris Climate Agency, we are on the field and we are trying to work operationally to help the implementation of Paris Action Plan. And we have seen a very broad set of subjects going from finance, health, adaptation, heat waves. Many things has been discussed. So it's not so common to have a so broad set of subjects to discuss. So thank you also for the organization of all these ideas. We had also the opportunity, and I hope that we will have time to continue this discussion in the next weeks or months about 3 subjects, and I know we share this with the city of Moscow: how we can mobilize the citizens, how we can help to renovate our buildings, and how we can organize a partnership with our private sector. This is the kind of things we are working in Paris, and we are really ready to share this experience. And last, also, I would really want to thank you, because we know that if we are looking what we have in front of us, and the subject is quite hard, and we know we have a lot to do in this century if we want to keep our temperature in our hands. And so I'm sure that all of you, and particularly me, I will come back to my office stronger, and we're more confident that cities and the world is on board for climate change. Thank you for that.
Merci beaucoup. Я позволю себе тоже.
I'll allow myself to make a short intermediate summary to make sure we remember everything. Yeah, we heard a lot of interesting proposals. Yes, in Moscow we are working on things. We have something to share, but we are only in the middle of the changes that are happening. And all the proposals that we heard today, of course, collaborating with population, generally working with population and with media and smart city projects. For us, it's very important, and we are working on it, and we plan to work on it in future. Secondly, we heard a lot of things regarding the renovation in Moscow. You know, we have a law passed on renovation, and many subjects of the Russian Federation are starting Moscow experience in this sense. And we had the first series of first set of old buildings demolished, and we are carrying on. We work on design, and Moscow Architecture Bureau is working on design, and it needs a lot of, and it has a lot of information already, and we can provide the information and information from here to those who design new residential and other areas, and we agree on the proposal to share the information. We have to relocate over 1 million people within the next 15 to 20 years, and all this is money from the budget, so it all will be covered by Moscow, so it's very important. Another important subject is climate and health. Together with we collaborate with WHO, and we are a driver of this subject in the Russian Federation. We take part in international projects, UN projects. I think the next speakers will be talking about information, transparency, and accessibility, and I think we represent an example of total disclosure. We do not hide anything, and I want you to see that for yourself. Please ask the questions, so we'll be happy to respond. So that's an intermediate summary, and I give the floor to
First of all, congratulations for this extraordinary event, for this very efficient event, and on behalf of WHO, I would like to express our gratitude that the second year we are here and work together with you. Our WHO representative in the Russian Federation, Dr. Milita, is permanent member of your council. And yes, we collaborate together, and we intend to further to try to find many other ways how we can extend this collaboration in the more efficient way. I'm Vladimir Kendrovsky, technical officer from Bonn office on climate change and health. We cover 53 member states, but for us is WHO as international health player. Global health player in the UN system. It's very important to work with the cities too. We have the health network established 40 years ago, but our member states are our drivers because we're international servants. And of course, I can share with you some of my take-off message for this meeting. Definitely the city experience here and some of the urban practice suggest that multidisciplinary planning, smart policies, cross-sectoral collaboration and community engagement is very important also in the planning process and can deliver very positive health, social improvement in all population groups. But there's still room for improvement. Adaptation is action in adaptation are costly, but for us in WHO we see the implementation of Paris Agreement as a great opportunity. We can share some of our tools and collaborate that will intend to show that this cost of adaptation are very lower compared with the health benefit. So this is one of the way how we can collaborate in the future, but also we can bridge also some of the existing gaps between the policymakers and the academia. So many of you knew result what we heard from Professor Revich. We can also transfer this knowledge to others in your neighboring country, for example, because Russia has adaptive capacity and you are in position to help to others. Thank you very much once again.
Да, добрый день. Я хотел свой...
Good afternoon. I wanted to connect my speech with the speech of my colleague Stefan Nyström, who also represents here the Swedish Agency on Environmental Protection. Stefan is sitting over there, and yesterday he was speaking about global climate changes, which is the subject that's being discussed within this forum. And he was speaking about the growth in population until how population will grow until 2050, and to make sure we manage that, we keep pace with it in the sense of city planning. Well, it's very important. I forgot the figure. How many cities we have to build that could host millions of people? Well, it requires very thorough city planning, which means that the subjects that were discussed within this forum and the subjects that are discussed within our International Council are of utmost importance. And we have to carry on discussing them to make sure that in 50, 70 years' time, for our grandchildren in 50 years' time to have a life of high quality. And I'd like to say that creation of this council and our participation in this council and in this forum is not only pleasant, but plays an important role. The Department of Environment, and it's great that the Department for Environmental Management of the largest city in the largest country, it's very important that this department undertook this initiative. Our agency is in charge of climate management, and it's a very interesting opportunity for us. It was a very interesting opportunity for us to take part in this, and we want to thank you for initiating this event, and we express our readiness to carry on. Having said that, I'd like to mention yet another thing. A lot of interesting issues were raised during these 2 days, and I think amongst all those things that have been mentioned within these 2 days, Swedish experience was shared, which was a bit different, and our economists were calculating the effect of something that we did, which was outstanding: transportation. You know that living in Moscow, you know how bad traffic is, and you know the negative results of heavy traffic. There are countries, Sweden is leading in terms of electric. Sweden supports converting to electric transportation. We had subsidies were tried to encourage use of electric cars in city transport. We are not we are not very advanced in this sense, but still we are working on it, just like you. And there were a big discussion and criticism. And it led, in our country, it led to a lot of criticism. I am a bicycle user, and I'm really irritated when I see the following. My home is uphill from where I work, and I have to cycle up for 14 kilometers. And when electric bicycles get ahead of me, and they buy these bicycles using the discounts that were and these discounts are insured by my colleagues. When this happens, well, you can have savings when car drivers switch to electric bicycles. It's to when governments correct me, Stefan, if I'm wrong, but I think it's 2 times less costly to switch from cars to electric bicycles than to switch from regular cars to electric cars. But still, I'm irritated when these people get ahead of me when I'm on my bicycle. But I don't know. I think still it's not easy to make people convert to electric bicycles from cars. But still, it's better in terms of cost and it's beneficial. And I am very happy that you have this initiative of creating bicycle tracks in Moscow, and it would be. I'm really anticipating seeing it in Moscow, and I think Moscow in future will become even a better city to live in. And I think that's it. Yeah, thank you. I think you are absolutely right about bicycles, regular bicycles and electric bicycles. Yeah, and I agree that in Moscow we have a lot of issues in terms of psychology, and still person on a bicycle is not a fully rightful member of city traffic, and we are developing the bicycles. I cannot say that we got this bicycle boom like in Copenhagen. We've been working on this for the last 6 or 7 years. We have to change the mentality, but we find it promising. As for electric bicycles promotion, well, we haven't yet got there. Maybe in the nearest time, I don't think that it will happen in the nearest years. What about kick scooters or electric kick scooters? Well, I don't think it's still quite comfortable to scooter along. But I think those who use the bicycles understand that, at least, and scooters too. Okay. I was very happy to listen to Swedish Environmental Agency. Okay, my turn now.
I am Rashid Ismailov from the Russian Ecological Society. Yesterday we had a very interesting event which was called Moscow Initiative Standards of Ecological Opening. This is one of the key issues of the environmental agenda. Accessibility and openness of ecological data. All of us, all the Russian people, have the constitutional right to receive authentic, accurate information about the actual state of the environment. But unfortunately, so far, this norm is not regulated anyhow. We do not have the concept of what ecological information is. Nevertheless, we have the request. Mainly, this is the request of society for receiving accurate environmental information. The request for improving the Institute of Public Control. We have the necessity to enter the agenda of a federal level with the implementation of environmental legislation, which is now being finalized and is almost at the kickoff. The questions of ecological openness will be tackled throughout all the 11 projects. Definitely, as was mentioned, the level of ecological openness is very high in Moscow, and your colleagues in different departments do a lot for that, and a lot is done to have Moscow open. But as a Moscovite, let me say to you and to representatives of departments, why don't we demonstrate Moscow's leadership? We came out with the initiative which I would like you to support. Yesterday, the colleagues supported it unilaterally for Moscow to develop a standard of ecological openness of the city of Moscow. This initiative was supported, and within the shortest time we tried to discuss it from every side. The authorities and businesses should be open, both parts, and decisions of the government must be open. The data must be open for Moscow. Information of planned activities of all economic subjects must be open. The feedback mechanism, that's important because as today's practice shows, there are some problems with that. Verification, all the data must be verified independently. It's best if that's done by the non-profit organization. Education as well, what we open and how we open. And by the way, today the department has such possibilities for education. A lot is being done in the capital, dear colleagues, but we would like to generalize everything which we did and elaborate on something, and of course introduce international experience and have everything concentrated in one document, everything collected together. That's going to be a unique project. You can probably tell that to the mayor, and in fact this is probably our request to you, that you could do it on our behalf, and you can make this project on C40 and on all other significant international platforms, and you will see that we will have something to pride ourselves on. Let us thank Russian Railways, Gazprom Neft, Morgan Stanley, Beacon McKenzie, Vernadsky Foundation, Greenpeace, Nature Saving Union, our Kazakhstan colleagues, and most likely the next standard will be in Astana. That's what they mentioned. Colleagues, we had great work. This was a great event. We had some drive because this was an open talk without censorship. So I would like all of you to support us with your applause. We are making the standards of ecological openness in Moscow. No. It's quite easy to an open city to introduce and implement such standards. If you are open already, you can voice any standard.
A representative from the software industry in Italy. A great spasiba also from my side for this fantastic networking event. I think it was a privilege to be here and to participate to it. Thank you also for inviting me to this council at the end, which I think is also a very good idea, where the many ideas and projects which were discussed in these 2 days can now get a little bit closer to practice. I am working with many cities in Europe and also outside Europe, and I help cities in managing their day-to-day problems, in improving their maintenance. And I think the key of adaptation to the climate change and of improving the environment is to improve the maintenance activities of cities, because those are activities which are done day by day, which are necessary, and if we can bring more environmental and ecological standards into it, automatically the environment will improve. And it's in this sense that I'm looking very much forward to collaborating over the next years with the city of Moscow in a LIFE is a European funding program, a LIFE project, where we are going to work on improving the ecosystem services and benefits of green areas in cities. And the project is called LIFE Urban Green. And I'm very happy that the city of Moscow will participate and will share research activities and test activities with other cities like Rimini, Krakow, and Taipei in Taiwan to develop new tools for improving the management of urban green areas, which we know are very, very important for our cities. So I will close here my word and thank you again for this fantastic event.
I am the last, I hope not the least. I come from Italy as Paolo does, and I repeat the congratulations for this wonderful event that has been organized by the Moscow City Council and other people. And during the event I have heard several times the word green economy, green building, green transportation, and so on. But I have heard such a few times the word trees. Being a tree man, I am a professor at the University of Florence in Italy, and I teach arboriculture and urban forestry. So I mainly deal with tree. I'm a tree man, meaning that my background is tree physiology, and I do research of tree physiology in the urban environment and how tree physiology is affected by climate change, by urban stresses like drought, like soil compaction, and so on, and how trees can help in fighting climate change. In my talk, I have underlined how important it is to maintain healthy trees. Having healthy trees means that our well-being can be improved, and also to have a better life for us and for our future generation. But we have to remember that trees are the only tool that we have to reduce the entropy of the city. Trees can transform the light energy in a better form of energy, and also how trees can help us in dealing with the problem of the urban environment. But we need to measure the benefits to know how much is the value of the tree benefits, and we have shown, not just us but also another colleague from Italy, how tree benefits can be measured. And I think that's it, and I would like to leave you with a message, and that we have to work together to make the world better, one tree at a time. So I hope this is the message for the future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. So far, we managed to make the session of the council, and the people had a chance to speak in connection with the events which took place. I'd like to draw attention to these beautiful waves which are running along the walls, and also ask you whether you went to multimedia room, and among everything else you can build an environment-friendly city there. So I would like you to see recommendations on the walls, and I hope that Moscow will continue to build like that. And actually a lot of nice things are drawn there. Fountains, open trees, low-story buildings, a lot of things which Moscow must take as a guidance, or at least continue to be an example of how to make it in practice, and not only on a beautiful multimedia stand. And still another question for discussion, I think. It was not officially mentioned anywhere, but since Moscow is such an innovative platform in that sense, a lot of things are generated here as an idea, or implemented as an idea, or tested as an idea. Maybe it might make sense to make some alliances or associations in that sense, some regional associations or municipal associations, so that Moscow could be used as a site for creating the so-called waves of good. This is something people do in the world. Not only cities take part in alliances, but also in the regional level. Let's say in Belarus, they have their own club of cities concerned, where in their platform, with the consideration of their specifics, they test the possibilities and ideas which are discussed in the international level. I think that might make sense to be done in Moscow. So if the Moscow government is ready to discuss this, I will be happy to help what I can to do it. Thank you. Actually, we discussed it with the colleague from Astana. What are the possibilities to create a climate association among the CIS cities? So we're already outside the frame outside the borders of Russia. We include former republics which we were united with actually during the time of USSR. We have common language and we can have common climate agenda, of course, why not? So far these are just projects in high level, but why not? And let me sum it up. What are the practical recommendations which we received during this forum? It's very important that business authorities and financial instruments interact because the climate agenda is very acute, but so far there is no rules of the game nor mechanisms of financing. They have not been defined in Russia yet. So I think this will still be discussed on the 3rd and 4th and 5th forum because financial models is something you can search for indefinitely. Mainly to make them accessible and workable. Openness was mentioned already, and the Green Fund, if the members of our expert public council with the mayor of Moscow still remember the first session, that was simply introduction in the theme. We told what was done in Moscow in recent years, and certain tasks were defined. So only 2 proposals were given, that is to extend our environmental strategy to 2050 because it was initially developed until 2030, and then start applying smart technologies and improve the quality of the green fund of the capital. We have a lot of trees. Over 50% of Moscow are covered with a green planting. I am speaking about old Moscow because there's also new Moscow. They have 90%. In that sense, we are very different from many metropolises which, in favor of transport, traffic, and residential construction, they destroyed those green territories. We have specially protected green territories in the city, which is also a phenomenon which you can not see in Europe. To have 18% of territories which are pristine in the city with many million residents. We are very proud of that, and we will definitely keep this heritage. And, of course, Riccardo Valentini expressed the proposal to monitor the Green Fund, special sensors which monitor the trees. This proposal was actually accepted, and we, in fact, advanced already in this direction in the recent 6 months. So I hope in some places of Moscow, let's say, linden trees on Tverskaya Street are quite expensive. Everybody understands that. They are quite old trees. We brought them back. There used to be linden trees, but then they were removed, and now they are brought back. Everybody accepted it positively. So we brought Tverskaya Street, gave Tverskaya Street back to pedestrians. Such kind of projects probably deserve this special monitoring. So far, the central part of the city has green plants. which have decorative function and are an image card, an identity card of our city. And of course, the question of technologies. We understand very clearly that there is a set of traditional measures which we have probably exhausted in our city. We implemented such changes which other metropolises were implementing for 20 or 30 years. But we were lucky because we were left behind, but we already had a chance to study international experience and then had a chance to apply it very quickly. But population is going to grow and the car fleet will grow as well, and traditional measures will not be sufficient anymore. So best available techniques are a very important subject for ensuring success in this field. So I thank the colleagues. There is, of course, this reference date bank. All those documents have been developed, of course, but they must not be restrictive. And probably not every technology can be applied in the Russian and in the Moscow land. Everybody must understand it. The technology is the best if it is applicable historically and geographically. Briefly, like that, and I do thank all the speakers, all moderators, and all participants of our forum. And I would like to say special thanks to the speakers of almost all the biggest countries. That's USA, UK, France, Germany, Italy, a little bit of some of Croatia, Japan, Singapore. Thank you so much, dear colleagues, and I'm confident that even after the World Championship, after the Football Cup, when Moscow received such a big number of foreign fans, this was a great challenge for us. And the mayor of Moscow said, we did not prepare this city for the Football Cup, especially because back in 2010 we had no idea that we were going to hold this Football Cup. But somehow we managed to build such a resistant city that even with such challenge, I think Paris will support me here because they held such events 2 or 3 times, and for us this was the first time, and we managed, and that is linked with climate as well, climate sustainability. So in a few years we have improved our resistance manifold, many times, but still we have to go forward. Moscow has missionary position as well, being pioneers, and anything new is first tested in Moscow, and then other constituent parts of the Russian Federation start to implement that. So it's very important that we had over 20 representatives of such constituent parts present here, people from other Russian cities for whom we gathered here.
We can thank your, I want to thank your department and all the employees of your department for this tremendous job that you did.
Me this comment, and it was very impressive. I'm Michikono from Japan, and I'm independent consultant of smart cities. And just before I came here, a very strong typhoon storm hit western part of Japan, and also a big earthquake happened in Hokkaido. And this revealed that even the very advanced infrastructure are still very fragile to the natural disaster. And also the climate change has even made the typhoons and the storms stronger because of the higher temperature of the ocean. And so we this fact revealed us that some elements of the smart cities must be reviewed in the context of the climate change. So what happened, what I learned during this forum in Moscow, and at the same time, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and I'd like to tell you that in 2020, Tokyo Olympic Games will be held, and for that event, we will run the fuel cell buses in Tokyo. So maybe it's a very advanced in using hydrogen for the transportation. And so in 2 years' time, if you come to Japan, then you will see some of the models of the future city. Thank you very much indeed.
Мы слышали на самом деле про водород.
Yeah, we heard about hydrogen batteries, and it's a very promising thing amongst OEMs. Yeah, if we are talking about lithium-based batteries, there won't be enough lithium. You are very advanced. We are following your advances in Japan. We have our own developments dating back to the Soviet times. We had and we have an institute that works on these technologies. But we are really anticipating the future, and we are really interested in your experience. I think we plan to come to Tokyo in October, I think. If it's possible for us to see some models, some pilots, it would be very useful for us. We'll be very grateful if you give us this opportunity. I think it's great that we conclude speaking of new technologies. So I want to thank everyone for your job. I want to thank the Department for Environmental Management for their organizational efforts, and I want to thank all the participants. And herewith, I think we can conclude. And I hope that next time here or in some other place, we'll continue the job that we've been doing for these 2 days. Thank you very much for your attention. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the second Climate City Forum is closed. We are looking forward to seeing you next year. Thank you.